And then I hope Eric joins us soon. He did accept the meeting. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. This thing, when I share it, screws up my ability to see people.
I don't think it's necessary. You sent those documents. I mean, I can pull them up on my phone unless everybody else thinks it's necessary to share, like the agenda and stuff like that. Because I think you sent all those documents out.
I did. The one
Oh,
thing
you wanted it? Yeah.
I do want to make sure that when we call this meeting to order, which we have, that I show the agenda for those who go back into the recording.
That makes sense.
But I will want to show some of that text in the proposal, because as I went through Christine Cook's response to the plethora of questions that we had, as well as Greg Kimsey's discussion yesterday, I realized there's a couple other places that we need to account for in the charter amendment that are relevant to what we're doing, and I didn't show it on this agenda, so I do want to reflect as we go through, and I do have that highlighted. Why don't we go ahead, and then Mary, if I need to bring Eric up to speed afterwards, then I'll find a time to do that. So what I wanted to do is I hope you all got a chance to read that proposal write-up. I'm going to put that on screen because there are a couple things I want to highlight in here. I'm about ready to, our cleaners just showed up, so I'm about ready to get a cat that's going to scurry out of here and go hide. All right, so let me pull up. So in what we're trying to do, let's see, and I don't know how big this is showing up on your screens. If this is this showing up large enough, or do I need to figure out how to zoom in some more? Are you able to read it?
It looks fine to me.
All right. So part of what when I was talking with Christine Cook and with Greg Kimsey, we're trying to do is use as much of the course the charter set, because the charter went from 3 districts to 4 districts. It went from 3 positions to 5 positions. So there is a course in the charter to do that transition. Unfortunately, the course is not just in Article 6. And so I want to go through and show how we do this course, and then talk about how we want to package this and send it off to the drafting committee, and eventually in a week or so out to the public. So first is kind of my stab at an explanatory statement. And it's probably going to need to be a little updated based on what I'm about to go through. But as I go through this document, feel free to jump in if there's anything that sticks out as overly complicated or needing clarification. I do need to fix this up because it does still refer to council input still needed. We've gotten that. And so that part, I'm actually going to take this. This is just a report, and then after our meeting, package it to send off to the drafting committee. So a lot of this, we need this information, we need this information. A lot of that's just going to come out of here and get turned into a proposal. So the first thing, obviously, that we have talked about is going to from 4 to 5 districts. Now that actually, if you recall, ends up being subject to the county council composition, which is in Article 2. And so we do need to coordinate with Kelsey Potter's group, who's dealing with the county chair, and make sure our language is consistent. So when we package this, it's actually going to end up being one rather complex amendment, because to get to 5 districts, we would need to eliminate the county council chair position and reclassify it as a district representative on county council. The thing that I think is still a question in my mind is changing the county council composition is one thing, but then how you deal with the chair in this new structure, I kind of punted that back to the council chair subcommittee, but we need to discuss at some point how that's worked into this amendment proposal, because we want to make sure we covered everything, but we don't want it to be too complex. So our work actually falls under section 6.4 district boundaries. Now, district boundaries in the current charter refer to it was not a map, it was a precinct, or kind of a precinct lookup table that was in Appendix A of the charter. And I'm going to pull that one up so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to need to stop sharing that and reshare this. So this is the structure, the district structure that was in the charter, and this needs to be in here in some form. I've shared with you a map that is more of a public presentation of what these districts would look like. We actually do need to, based on, since this is a structural element of the county government, which is reflected in the charter, we will need to, as part of packaging the final proposal, match up precincts and districts. And that's one thing. We're going to need to work closely with the elections office, because under statute, precincts need to be less than a certain number of population per precinct. I think it's 1,500, and it sticks in my mind for some reason. Well, as the county has grown since 2014, they've added more precincts so they can stay within that no more than 1,500 number. So right now,
Can I ask a question before we move about this particular thing before we move forward? Now, as far as my understanding, and then listening to Greg Kempsey's response and that kind of stuff, it's like, yes, we can put in like precincts, but it does seem like that what we would be asking for is 5 districts, and when they redistrict because of the census and everything that's going to be happening next year, they are the ones that are going to be actually defining borders and stuff. So as far as us, like, saying anything that, and getting into the leads there, it just doesn't seem like that is, I don't know, because they are the ones that Greg Kimsey is going to be working with to make sure that our districts take into account precincts and precinct borders. I don't really know what we as the charter commission, we just want to say we want 5 districts, right? Well, that's kind of my.
It's not as simple as that, and I'll explain why. I'm pulling up.
Because I didn't see anything in our original thing that said anything about precincts, that said in the original charter, unless you're adding more.
So the question that has not had a lot of legal case study behind it is on what the scope of a redistricting committee would be. And typically redistricting has dealt with boundary changes of existing districts. And on a state level, they will deal with legislative districts and congressional districts if we add or lose a seat on the congressional level. The problem is, until that redistricting committee takes whatever action it has, and there's a chance it may not take action in time of filing week in 2022, we need some way to form a transitional government structure until we get to this point where the redistricting committee can take its action. And this also is in the case if we have a vacancy that all of a sudden shows up on the county council after January 1st of 2022, we need some way to figure out how that person would, where they have to reside in that specific district in order to appoint them to fill a vacancy. So we need some structure in this to carry us over until this redistricting plan is adopted. So at this point, I'm looking back in 2011-ish when we had the last census. There was a rather lengthy time that the statewide redistricting committee went through its process, and it was longer than the time that we have between when this redistricting committee convenes in February and when filing week happens for the 2022 elections in May. So there's a chance they would not make that date, which means we need some way for people to know what seat they're filing for, and some way for elections office to confirm that that person is a resident of that district that they're filing for. And so that's why we actually do need to have some structure with this. What I need to work through with, or we need to work through with Greg Kimsey and Chris Cook, is how detailed does it need to be? Is it by precinct, or is it boundaries as defined on the map that would be subject, that are called transitional, that would be subject to finalization by the redistricting committee? So what I guess I'm waffling because I'm not, this is one of these kind of uncharted territories for us in some respect. Because we're in this perfect storm that we did not have in 2014. The perfect storm being, we're looking at charter amendments that change the number of districts and essentially our council composition. We have 2022 elections coming up where 3 of the current positions are on the ballot. And we have a decennial redistricting process prescribed under federal and state law that's in the charter that needs to happen, all at the same time, and they're all somewhat dependent on each other. So that's why I think I'd at least like to have out of our session today what I call transitional map, where then we can present this to the public as this is a potential of what the district map would look like under a 5-district scenario. But before we take action as a commission on forwarding this as a formal ballot amendment or ballot measure, we need to make sure what details need to be involved in this. And that's the part at this point. My understanding is we do need to have some way to define those boundaries in a transitional period at least, in order to enact this amendment if it's voted in.
Okay, and so it sounds like Greg Kimsey is willing to work with us on that.
Yes, and I've been working.
Okay.
I have actually been working with him and with GIS directly to develop this map, because one of the things that Greg requested, and you might have seen, you might have caught a snippet of some email correspondence between him and the GIS office and our group, that they would like to see a provision in this charter saying you don't split precincts. And right now we have some examples of where precincts have been split by district boundaries. And so I've been working with GIS to at least form these boundaries on this transitional map so we aren't splitting precincts.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
okay, well, that's
actually
as long as they're, yeah,
it
thanks
actually
for
makes it
clearing that up.
very difficult when you split a precinct with a district boundary, because then you need to know exactly where one person lives related to that line within that precinct. And so that's why they asked if at least forming this map, if we could not split precincts, and that's the case. This map that I've shared with you does not split precincts.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Sure.
Okay.
And I say this is actually a lot more complex than we originally started out thinking this was going to be, but it's actually what we're talking about right now is exactly what we need to talk about to cover this, to carry this through. So I'm going to stop sharing that for a second. I want to go back to this Word document here. So I mentioned that, all right, so we have, I'm going to zip down. So under Article 6, there's actually one place where our work is directly affecting an amendment, and that's in the district boundaries. So the easy change to this section is to take out the word initial, because we already been there, and just have this, whatever it is that comes out, whether it's a map or whether it's the list of precincts, that this become the new Appendix A for the charter. And as you mentioned, Terry, if the Redistricting Committee modifies this to balance, to make sure we have balanced population or whatever their criteria are for all 5 districts, we need to have some provision in here that recognizes that finalization of the district boundaries and precincts. So that would be one thing. I'm going to mark that down. So I think that is something we're going to need to make sure is in the language here. So reflect changes by redistricting. Now, the next area where going from 4 to 5 districts is a little tricky. We have a roadmap for it. Unfortunately, the roadmap for it is in Article 10, which is the transitions article to go from where we were to the charter initially. If you remember, we had this discussion in a Charter Review Commission meeting that once we make amendments to the charter, Article 10 disappears. And so what we need to do is come up with something that's a transitional language that essentially puts that portion of Article 10 back in the charter. So now I'm going to pull up what the charter currently says about that and talk about that. We actually can use this roadmap. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen. So this language that's in the charter right now in Article 10 actually is very good, and we could use most of it with some minor modification for what we're trying to do here. And it basically, it covers going from 3 members eventually to 5 members. It goes from 3 geographies or 3 districts to 4 districts. And it says how they are going to make that transition, specifically which representative goes to which district. And Terry and I had a discussion before we started the meeting that on the map that I shared, there's actual names in there of the incumbents in those positions. And Terry suggested, and I wholeheartedly agree with her, that we don't put specific names in this charter amendment, that we actually continue to refer to the positions. So the map, which shows names, is just used for reference and for information in case the question's asked, well, who's in that seat now? And how would where would they go? And things like that. So I think this is really good transition language, and both Chris Cook and Greg Kimsey suggested, they've already covered this. We might need some tweaking for a specific instance here, but this is a pretty good roadmap to get us to where we need to be on the ballot. And if it's enacted by the voters, gets us the language, the legal language that can be incorporated into the charter that covers this transition plan. Essentially on that map, what I was trying to do is keep it simple. So we're going from 4 geographies to 5 geographies, where we would be eliminating the countywide council chair, and we need to figure out where does that position go. So the easy thing, and the thing that I think flows most smoothly and seamlessly, is to say we've got 4 districts now. We've got representatives in each one of those districts now. Let's just go 1 to 1. 1 through 4 transition to 1 through 4. And then we put the chair in the new geography, District 5. And so I want to pause there and see what you think, get a temperature check on doing that.
It was good to me.
Terry, what do you think?
Oh, yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I know that there was some discussion, and I'm just kind of like taking all in, all the conversations, and I really appreciate you including the entire committee on the conversations with GIS and that kind of thing. There's discussions about lengthening current terms and not lengthening. It seems like you've kind of worked that out where this doesn't really do that.
Yeah, and this doesn't do that. We don't need to do that.
Oh, good, good.
And actually and it's good that we don't have to do that. What I was trying to figure out is we have, and I'm going to click on this draft map. And under this boundaries, is the map on your screen? All right. So under this boundary scenario, there's a really good possibility that we would have 3 current councilors residing in the same district. And I was trying to figure out, how do we, knowing that 3 of these positions are up for re-election next year, how do we first assign who goes into what district? I see Eric Holt coming on.
Sorry about that. I just got off another meeting, so I ran over.
All right. Well, Eric, I'm kind of midway in talking about the district map and how we worked out some of the questions that have been going back and forth with Chris Cook and with the elections office. And so right now what we're talking about is, I'm going to click back on it, how we transition from 4 districts to 5 districts. And the charter went from 3 districts to 4 districts, but also had a wholesale transition plan that went with it. I was originally asked the question, well, so we don't create this disconnect or issue with continuing, kind of smoothly continuing county government operations if this were to be enacted starting January 1st, 2022. And there's a possibility we could end up with 3 of the current councilors living in the same new district or the same revised district. What are the options? Do we extend the length of terms and not have to deal with the changing the boundaries later? What do we do? And what Greg Kimsey and both Greg Kimsey and Chris Cook went back to me and said, pointed me back to the charter actually covered this instance, and that's section 10.6 part D4. If 2, and it just used 2. Now we have in this case possibility of 3, but it's we have a way out of this too, without having to deal with changing the terms of the current sitting councilors. But essentially, if they reside in the same district under this transitional new districting scenario, the council member residing closest to another council district other than the district in common shall represent the other district for the remainder of the term for which they are elected. So for example, if the current councilor for District 3 under this new map all of a sudden kind of just across the board, the new district border in District 4, they could then continue to be under this provision designated the District 3 representative, at least for the remainder of their term. Both District 3 and District 4 had their positions elected in 2020, so they're not up until 2024. So this provision here gives us the ability to say that, okay, District 3, if you, even though you might not live in this district as we've defined it here on this map, but you're close, you're the closest one, you continue to serve out your term representing that district until it's up for election in 2024. Then you have to look and see if that person is now living physically within this district. But that is something they'll have to reckon with in the 2024 elections. Same with District 4. District 4 also is not up for re-election until 2024. So the person representing that district now could continue to represent this district to the end of their term. And then again, when the 2024 elections come around, we need to figure out if that person, that incumbent, is still within the new District 4 boundaries. District 1 actually does, it's pretty similar to the way it looks now. So the incumbent there would continues to reside in this new the revised district boundaries. District 2, when that original map that I sent around, we had a rather large imbalance in certain districts in population, and so we attempted to balance. So the District 2 current representative would be the closest to, and may actually now, because we've tried to balance the population better, may actually reside in the new boundaries. But even if they didn't, they would be the closest to, and they would represent District 2 at least next year, because District 2 is up for re-election next year. Same with District 1. Now, The one that's a little bit more complicated is the council chair. The council chair is up for re-election next year. Under this scenario, the council chair position goes away, and under this transition plan, that council chair becomes the District 5 representative for 2022 until somebody is elected in the 2022 elections to fill that seat. But again, most of this process is already covered in section 10.6. Now, Eric, before you came on, the problem with 10.6 is there is the current provision in 9.7, which we've talked about before on the commission, is the text of the transition article shall appear only in the initial charter as published. So the minute we make an amendment to the charter, Article 10 goes away under this section 9.7. So we, in order to provide for this transition plan, we need to figure out, do we basically modify this to just change this to say that transitional will apply to any amendments that need it to, and then continue to show something like this with some modifications to reflect our existing, or in our case here, or do we put a transition plan under our Article 6 related to district boundaries? And so that's more of a legal question. I think the fact that this plan is there and provides us a pretty good map to get to where we want to go, we need this to show up somewhere in the chart. The question is just, where's the best place to house it? So I'm going to stop there for a minute. I know I'm covering a lot of stuff. To see if you have any questions. Eric, I know you came on after we talked about a little bit about how this relates to Article 2, which is the council composition and the council chair. So this is it's all interrelated. So we're going to need to work with the council chair subcommittee to mesh this language together into one amendment, because it's all related. And what in the engineering business we call cause and effect. I'm going to stop to see if there's any questions.
Well, one thing that I was concerned with, and what I saw happen on the original charter, and then now in this one, is that the maps are already starting District 4 and District 5, the ones with the most population growth potential, at a higher population level than the other districts. And I'm wondering, what is the thinking behind it? To me, it seems backwards. That you know that District 1, 2, and 3 are not going to grow a lot because they only have so much usable land, whereas District 4 and District 5 are going to continue to boom for the next 20 or 30 years. Why are they starting out at a much higher population, even though they're lower now than they were in the original maps? It's still they're going to be 20,000 people higher in each one in growth than over the next 5 to 10 years. So why are we starting it backwards?
Well, and that's a good question. And as I found out when I asked Christine Cook the question, can we put in a clause that once a population trigger is reached, we can go from 5 to 7 districts and not have it go through a charter amendment vote process? I mean, can we just put in that trigger provision now? The problem is we can't lock something that's a future possibility or future decision into the decision that we're making now. So with
I saw that exchange. It makes sense.
Yeah,
you don't want to take the powers away from them.
The districting is based on state law, and I don't know enough about redistricting, but one of the things that they have to work with is districts and precincts need to have same or similar population totals existing.
Okay.
And so we can't
That
really
makes a lot more
base it on
sense.
the future, but what we can do, the map I'm showing now, I've been working with GIS the last couple of days to try to balance things out a little bit better. And I'm realizing this is a much more intensive process to try to balance out these districts into equivalent, similar populations. Because if you recall, one of the things I was suggesting is, well, can we move District 3 a little bit further east? Well, we can, but we could move that line a half mile to the east, and we captured 20,000 more people, which comes out of District 4. So in that original example, we ended up with District 3 having almost 130,000 people, and District 4 having in the 70s, which is way out of balance. So we just kind of went back to this. Now the question is going to be, what is it that we present? What is it that goes on the ballot, and what absolutely needs to be linked to a charter amendment? And right now, the only thing that the charter doesn't link a map, it links voting precincts. The issue with voting precincts and having it locked in the council districts like this is that since 2014, they've needed to add several precincts to keep the population per precinct within the limits. I think it's 1,500, somewhere in that range. Each precinct needs to have 1,500 people to keep them balanced, or no more than 1,500 people. And so the question is, we know we have a redistricting committee coming up sometime in 2022. We think they're going to convene starting in February. They're going to officially set the boundaries, which means they officially set the precincts that are within these district boundaries. And so what is it that we need to attach? Because we need to attach something. We can't just say, we got 4 now, we're going to have 5 in the future. We'll wait till the redistricting committee finishes their work. Well, that work, there's a possibility that work won't be wrapped up before filing week of 2022. And then the question is, well, how do you know if you're eligible to file for this position if you don't have a roadmap to show you who's in it? And so we need to have something defined, either a map or a district or precincts, or maybe both. And we still need to work through that detail. That's something that I'll probably work on as we take these amendment proposals through the public town halls. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds and have people focus on my precinct really belongs in District 5 rather than District 3, those type of things. So what I'd prefer to do is to show this draft map, and you notice the title says Draft 5-District Transitional Map Proposal, and see if we need to, how much we need to work to get these population totals to balance between districts. You'll notice that these are a little bit more balanced than what you saw originally, and that's because I've been working with GIS to try to balance these. One of the things I also found out from talking with legal counsel and talking with Greg Kimsey is districting processes do not take into consideration where the existing councilor or representative lives. In 2014, when they did the charter transition, it actually fell out pretty cleanly that they didn't map any of the existing commissioners out of office. The only question was that if you read through this, District 1 and District 2 were up for re-election in 2015 or 2014, and whoever won 2014, which ended up being Jeannie Stewart in District 1, became that representative. And then District 2 then was put on the ballot as a new district in 2015. So Terry suggested, and I really agree with her on this, is that anytime we talk about these district to district or council chair to district transitions, we kind of keep the incumbent name out of that discussion and out of the charter. The only reason I put it in here, and actually Greg Kimsey was suggesting that as well, the only reason I put it in here is just to give us an idea who's there and what year are they up for re-election. But for this, basically for this map, this does not take into consideration or does not adjust the boundaries based on which counselor lives in which district. And that's the cleanest way we can do it.
Okay, I have a quick question, just because, you know, and thanks for bringing that up, Eric, the fact that it seems kind of unbalanced with the population and stuff. And I don't know how, I mean, for me, I guess it just doesn't seem that hard to, like, maybe say District 2 has too many and District 1 doesn't, to pull off 5 precincts there and, you know, and add those to District 1. I mean, I understand it might not look as clean, and then there would be a decision about what precincts to pull and those kind of things. But there was a decision made on this map as well. And so any attempt to make it more, at least more balanced than it is right now would be awesome.
Well, and that was a question I was going to put out to you all, because I can, you know, we or whoever wants to help me work with GIS to do this, we can do it. This is actually the 4th version of this map since the one you saw that I've done with GIS, because as I mentioned, you move the line just slightly east and you end up with 20,000 more people in the district. So it's really trying to figure out where can you modify these boundaries to balance things out. And yeah, we're down to where I don't think there's major geographic changes that need to happen. District 2, we probably just need to modify because where it is close to District 1 and District 3, well, District 2 is over, District 1 and 3 are under. So moving some of this boundary north or west is probably, we can do that. It's just going to take a little bit of iteration to get there. So that was my question. Are you okay if I continue to work with GIS, even though these proposals have gone out for the town halls? And if anyone wants to work with me on that, I'd be happy to have the help.
So, I mean, I think that this proposal as is, and going out to town halls is you know, that's fine at a town hall when you're talking, and we can kind of, and you can just say where they're attempting to make it more evenly populated between the districts. But then also, and then I am on my way home and I have all next week off, and be happy to help you with anything that you want me to help you with, Chuck, and Dorothy, you as well as being the chair of the other committee that I'm on. Anything that you want me to do next week, I'm free to spend a lot, you know, give me homework.
I think what I could do is see if GIS can give us a precinct map and population per precinct for these areas right along the boundaries. And then we can start looking at what makes sense. Because I'm also trying to realize that you know, we do have some you've got like Burnt Bridge Creek or things that are more natural barriers, how they work in. But if you want to help me with that, I can make the request to GIS to give us that information, and we can just start looking at tweaking these boundaries to get these populations down. So I think you could easily tweak these boundaries between 2 and 1 and 3 and bring enough people out of District 2, put them into 3 and 1, that gets them pretty close to that 103,000 number that's our target, 102,934. The other thing to keep in mind with this is based on the the GIS OFM estimates of population. This is not the 2020 census numbers, but this is as close as we can get until we get those numbers. And that's the other perfect storm that we're dealing with here, is that these are very close estimates, but they are not the actual census numbers, which the Redistricting Committee will work with, and they can't actually do their work until they get these census numbers by precinct, which have not yet been released. So yes,
Just let me know what you need.
I'll gladly take the help, because I'm gonna
Okay,
need
let
it.
me know what you need.
So I think that kind of, I'm gonna go back to the agenda. Unfortunately, the way this crazy sharing thing does it, I can't get to the tab that I want to get to. That doesn't work. All right, I'm gonna have to stop sharing and then reshare the agenda. I guess we can blame Microsoft for that, even though this is WebEx. All right, so let me share the agenda and just make sure that kind of covered everything. So my intention is to take out, kind of after this meeting this afternoon or tomorrow morning, revise our proposal, which will include this map marked draft. And I'd like you to get a final set of eyes on it before it goes to the drafting committee. But it basically is taking that report document that I've been kind of popping up on the screen every so often, summarize these different charter provisions in there, and essentially get it sent off to the drafting committee so they can package it with the council chair's part into a comprehensive proposal. So that's kind of my thoughts where we want to go from here, but I wanted to see what you all think.
I'm good with that. So you would just do like some cleanup and then just send it out an email and
Mhm.
we could just go, oh, if we see anything glaringly, then yeah, okay, I'm good with that. Thanks.
Yeah, and so the actual strike through underline text is, I'm going to put it at the end, because that template that we developed from the drafting committee is kind of explain what you're doing and how you get there, but don't go into the weeds as far as the detailed amendments. So you'll see, what you'll see is something that removes that we need to get legal counsel follow up on this. Well, we've got legal counsel follow up, so I'm going to take that out and essentially just focus on what is our proposal, what needs to happen, and then attach as kind of an addendum the markups. I would like to include that map though in the proposal, because I think out of transparency, I think I'd like to hear what the public thinks.
You can do that
especially,
and just say
yeah.
that, and just say this is subject to, tweaking
Mhm.
and minor changes. I think that's totally appropriate. Yeah, and then you're in the proposal that you're going to present at the meeting, then you'll take out all language, names of, and those kind of things out of that now. Because I
Yeah,
know
and
in some of our emails you had some of that, and it's like, oh, yeah, we go
yeah,
that way. Yeah.
it's what this is doing. I'm going to send tomorrow. I'm going to send this to the drafting committee. It's going to be up to them to package it for the full commission review next week. Eventually, we or the drafting committee are going to be asked to bring this into more of a ballot proposal, which will need to bring in that strike through underlying language. But tonight I'm just going to give a quick report and maybe summarize
Okay.
the discussion, but not actually present anything. I don't think it's on the agenda other than giving a chair report.
Okay.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to get your read on, we haven't been asked about it, but I continue to get questions from Commissioner Lasher about this. If we go to a 5-district scenario, at this point, all we've talked about is keeping the nomination and election by district in place. We have not talked about going back to a nomination by district countywide election model, other than in passing in the past. Do you want to bring that back up, or do we just want to leave this and let somebody else
My
have that as a separate discussion?
my understanding with Doug as well, and I've had conversations with him as well, is we as a commission talked about it at that one meeting, and we brought up the Washington Voters' Rights Act and why districting is important. And I think that everybody, I think we actually even voted, I'm not sure, I'll have to go check, that
Yeah.
that was important to us, is that districts had representation. So I don't know, has Doug talked to you lately about it? Because I went extensively, sent him a lot of information about the Washington Voters' Rights Act and what that was about. And that was about giving counties the ability not to do that because it does disproportionately affect people that, people's representation.
Yeah,
So
he talked to me
I
about
don't,
it on Friday. And
well,
it wasn't as under the Voting Rights Act, it was under the guise of the way that things were done. And if we eliminate the countywide council chair, we no longer have any countywide council offices, running for office countywide or serving, representing countywide. So that was what he was looking at.
yeah,
I don't necessarily, I actually don't agree with that, because having run for one of the counts, and Eric, you ran countywide, so you should know. It takes a lot of work and a lot of money just to run in a district. And then
yeah,
try to have 5 people, some of whom may not be able to afford that, try to do that countywide. I'm just not, I'm not on board with
there's
that.
there's so many in my mind disadvantages to it, you know,
Mhm.
to candidates, to the people that live in, in districts. It's just there's so much disadvantage to it.
Dorothy, your thoughts on that?
I'm totally against allowing the county-wide elections. I think that it really does diminish the purpose of having us districted. Like the whole reason is
Mhm.
so that we can pick representatives that represent our area, both geographically and by population. And so it doesn't make sense then to allow like rural county to make decisions about urban representatives and county to make decisions about who represents the rural areas. Just doesn't make sense.
And I guess I will go back and look at our meetings of our mission. But I do believe we discussed it in detail, and we did the first touch, and everybody's like, no, not interested in a
Yeah.
a countywide general election for everyone.
Yeah, I think the only purpose of a county-wide after doing a district primary is just to temper extremism, and that you lose fair representation with that. Even though I get it, I get where Doug's coming from. You want tempered leadership in a county that's doing county things, but a district should be able to elect their representative, Marjorie Taylor Greene or not, and have their representative for their district, and
Mhm.
to be able to put up anybody and have the county knock that back down, whether they're more progressive or more extreme conservative, I don't think it's a fair way to run a legislative branch.
All right. Well, I told Doug we'd talk about it, and we did, and we'll move on. All right. Well, it's getting to be noon. Um, it looks like you're ready to board a plane, Terry, somewhere. You coming home? Yes.
I am coming home, and
All
yeah,
right.
it was really great to be away.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Just thanks, Chuck, for putting this together and all your hard work. It's really fantastic. I'm looking forward to just a little bit more finessing on those population boundaries, but you knocked it out of the park. You did some really good work here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I
All right,
really
well,
appreciate your expertise on this.
thank you for sticking with me. This has been a challenge. You know, I thought we'd just say, okay, 4 to 5, let's just change a couple words, but it ain't that easy. But I appreciate you
Nothing,
sticking with it.
nothing. Yeah, thank you, Chuck. I really, and for about the 5th time this hour, I tell you, I really appreciate it. And then, nothing that's, you know, worth it, anything is easy. You know, you got to, and we appreciate you putting the work in.
All right, well, thank you all. Gonna sign off and stop recording. Now the meeting is